Back in Lesson 1, we talked about art journaling combining text and visual imagery on most pages. But remember, you're allowed to break the rules and come up with your own rules. But if you want to include text, then I have a question for you. How do you feel about your own handwriting? And how do you feel about what you're actually going to write? In this lesson, I'll show you how to use text in a variety of ways, from design elements to headers and accents. You'll also get tips on how to make your writing more artistic and calligraphic. Do you want to be able to read what you write? Do you want to be able to note elements of your adventure? Do you want your text to be obscure or legible? I'm going to show you a variety of ways to play with text, mainly using it as a decorative or graphic element on your page, something that's going to help anchor the experience and really activate the page with your personal mark. I want to show you just right off the bat how to obscure your text. I use that because early on in my art journaling I realized I was uncomfortable thinking about my own family reading what I was writing or my students, partially because it put me really concerned about my spelling, or maybe what I was writing was a little bit lame, not all that profound. So I decided to obscure my text just so I could write freely and still use it as a graphic element. So the easiest way to obscure your text is to just get rid of all the spacing. Get rid of the spacing between each word and get rid of the spacing between each line. That is going to require somebody to really want to read what you've written, but it also gives this really cool sort of pattern, mark-making, graphic element onto your page. Another way to obscure text is to write in a directional fashion that's not straight horizontal lines like we're used to. So here I had drawn a circle and I just kept moving the page around and around to write in a circular fashion. That's pretty hard to read as well. If I wanted to, I could go back and actually make out each word, but it just obscures it, and I think that's sort of a nice decoration. Here's a variation on the directional text where I've just written and allowed it to overlap. I'm going to take a few more minutes to show you this text band approach, which is a great way to both obscure and decorate your page. Here's going to be some variations. And then another way to obscure your text is to work with watercolor pencils and then bleed them out. I'll show you that. The text band is a great technique because there are hundreds of variations. I'm just going to get you started, but I really encourage you to explore a whole variety of ways of doing this. I'm starting with a pencil because I can erase it pretty quickly, and I've made some parallel lines pretty close together down here, and then I put another line in just a bit higher up, and then I put the top line in to curve just to show you again some of the many variations. I'm going to use a neutral colored pencil that will bleed with water, so it gives me that opportunity to add another element, but you could do this with any pen, colored pen, a black pen, whatever you want, and you can use a whole variety of colors with your colored pencil. Again, you're not limited, I just want to get you started. I also recommend that you start with a simple alphabet where you're working with both capital and lowercase letters just to get used to the writing technique of taking your letter from the top line to the bottom line, because the big trick with this is there are no ascending or descending letters. In other words, I'm not going to bring my letter shape above this top line, nor will I go below. I'll show you what I mean. For the capital letter A, I'm starting at the bottom and going to the top, and then I'm putting my lowercase letter a in. They're both the same height. Below it, I'll put the letter A, so I've got the capital and the lowercase, and then I'm going to really squish it down to this area. Now watch what happens with the B. Here's a capital B and lowercase b. Here's a capital B and lowercase b. And it gets squished way down, capital B and lowercase b, etc. So this text starts moving with the band. Again, mostly for that graphic kind of rhythmic quality. Once I fill my band with this colored pencil, I can take a paintbrush, a wet paintbrush, back to my trusty little water chamber paintbrush, and I can just bleed over as much or as little as I want. That helps obscure it, and it also creates more of a graphic element. Let me show you one that I did earlier. Here's the alphabet, uppercase and lowercase moving along the band. And if I add a little bit of watercolor to bleed those out, this band is going to look three-dimensional. And it doesn't have to be exacting. It's just the concept of going from the dark to the light for an extra variation. Now that's going to obscure the writing. If you put your words really close together and remember, get rid of the spacing, it's really hard to read, but I think it's a lovely addition to an art journal page. Here's how I used it in a page while I was in New York. First, I created those vignettes we talked about, and then I put my text bands in. This band uses just a regular pen, and here I am putting my text in with the colored pencil. One of the variations, if you do want to read your text, one of the variations to include is to separate your words a little bit. I'll show you more examples of that coming up. But here I took the word and every time I got to and, I wrote that in script just to give it a little breather, a little more white space in there. On the facing page, here's my text band behind that vignette. And then I broke my own rule. I was kind of getting tired of writing. So I did some of the patterning that I saw at the museum in that text band. It's super fun to break your own rules with this. So one of my favorite places to go with my journal and a couple of pens and a pencil, just taking myself on a journal date, is to pretty much any bookstore. There's just something so inspirational and quieting and inspiring about being surrounded and hugged by all these lovely potential stories and adventures. I was at a bookstore recently. I took a picture, added that to my journal page, did a little quick sketch, and I set up my text band inspired by the horizontal lines of the bookshelf. So the text bands can be perfectly laid out if you'd like, as well as those curves. I was playing with just doing some meditative writing or just centering by doing this text in the text band, because one thing that happens is it slows you down. You write more slowly, your thoughts calm down, and it's just a wonderful way to spend an afternoon or even an hour. So using the same concept of squishing your text together and getting rid of the space, you can fill up an entire background with stream of consciousness writing or just picking up on conversations you hear around you, and that text becomes like a wallpaper. In this case, I've created background text around a quick pen and ink drawing that I did, just a pretty simple drawing of some flowers. And it looked a little plain, so I went back in with my brush and I added water to basically bleed that watercolor pencil just to give it a little more of a silhouette around my drawing. So my background text is the same thing as calling it wallpaper, basically. And you can do that with any pencil, any tool that you're comfortable with. Now I'd like to show you how to create a banner on your page. You've probably seen this on chalkboards and coffee shops and all over social media. It's really fun to learn how to do it yourself, so you can add it to punch up a page a little bit, make it a little extra special. It seems magical to just put a few lines together and come up with a banner. We're going to start with 2 arched lines, and I'm working in pencil because I'll go over this in pen after the whole thing is complete and I can erase any mistakes. So we start with these 2 arched lines parallel to one another, and then we bring down vertical lines on either side. Now somewhere in that vertical space, I'm just going to do the middle, but it doesn't really matter. I'm going to put an arched line there. And then I'm going to bring down a straight line, another vertical, and an arch. Might look confusing now, but this is going to finish it off beautifully. So from the bottom of this vertical here, I'm going to put an arch and then put my V shape. Do the same thing on the right. From the bottom of that lower vertical, I put an arch and a V shape. Can you see the banner starting to take shape? Now I need to make this look more dimensional, so I'm going to connect this corner with the bottom corner with an angled line like that, and I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. I'm connecting that corner to the bottom corner with an angled line. Now I get to have some fun with shading in those little triangle spaces, just with some straight lines. But you can go to town and you can shade with different colors. You can use watercolor, whatever you'd like to shade in there. Now I'll show you a quick trick. Instead of worrying about figuring out how to get your letters to go across the whole thing, you can end whatever letter it is. So let's say the word is banner. And if my spacing is a little cattywampus, so my banner word doesn't go clear across or is not centered, here's a calligraphic trick. I just take that R and make it flourish all the way out, and there it looks centered. Here's an example of a banner on a page. Wrote the word dreaming. I did the outline of the banner in pencil first, went over it in pen and erased it. Oh, look what's in the background there. There's some background text, kind of acting as wallpaper, fading in the background. You can download the guide sheet for creating a banner because it's in your class materials. Another tool that's really great for journal writing and for being portable are these letter guides. They're often sold as a set with 3 of them together, although sometimes you can find the small one by itself. I love to use them because it offers a nice contrast between something that seems almost rigid and mechanical next to your own personal handwriting. Or if you're really upset with your handwriting, which I hope you're not, but you can get away with getting a lot of text down with these lettering guides, and it can look really great. All you're going to do is place the lettering guide where you'd like it, color it in with a pen. Couldn't be easier. Now, sometimes it's a little tricky trying to figure out how to get everything lined up. So the secret is try not to line them up. Purposely move things up and down so the bottom line is not going to be straight. You're purposely moving things so it wiggles around a bit. It will look more natural. So there you see a way to use the lettering guides in your book. Here are a couple of quick examples. I've got this word of, dreaming of, as a contrast to dreaming. And here's where I used the lettering guide and wrote the word canceled and then combined it with my own handwriting on the page. Next, I'd like to show you how to make a shape out of your words. There's a lot of ways that you can use this, but here's the basic technique. I'm going to write the word New York, and I'm going to use cursive. Once I have it written in pencil, because I'll probably want to erase that, I'm going to take my pen and create a shape around those letters. So I'm not touching the pencil, I'm just going around the letters. And a shape is basically just a closed off area. So I'm going around the letters, and then I'm going to close off the area. There's the new in New York. So I'm not going over that pencil, I'm just getting close and following the pencil mark to create the shape. So my 2 words, new and York, are now shapes. I'm going to erase that pencil. And now you just see the shapes. Here's how I've used them in my journals. I did that directly on the New York map. And because it was a little glossy, I didn't even bother erasing the pencil that's in there. Now, if you really want to get fancy, you can take that shape and cut it out. So here's the map shape cut out and attached to a paint sample called Girlfriend. I don't know why that color would be called Girlfriend, but I went to New York with a girlfriend, so I figured that would work pretty well. So you can see that this entire shape was cut out and glued down on another surface. Here's another example of the word shape, because I did a page to honor my mother's handwritten recipes. So I wrote moms, and you can see that I created the shape around the word and then cut that out and cut out that additional O space in there. Here's my banner that we just talked about, Mom's Memorable Handwritten Recipes. I'm going to show you how to play with that text in a minute. And here's another example where I took the word Barcelona, wrote it out in pencil on this decorative paper. I went over it with my Sharpie. It bled a little bit, but I kind of like that additional black. And then I carefully cut around the entire shape. The biggest challenge here is using a glue stick on the back and getting it attached, but it wasn't that hard. Our final topic for this lesson is really how to use your own script. Now I know you're ready to feel good about your handwriting. Let's start with some simple script. I'm just going to use the word journal. And here's a really easy way to make it look more calligraphic, more decorative. It's by adding weight to sections of the lines. In this case, I'm going to weight the bottom. So I take the J, I'm going to add some weight or extra ink down here and blend that up. I'm going to add some weight or extra ink inside of that O, inside of the U. So any place where the text basically hits that bottom line, I'm going to add some weight. And I think you'll see that this just makes it a little more decorative, a little fancier. I added some on the outside of that A, whoop, there goes a little more near the L, and then I'll make a little flourish at the end. So this word journal, I think, looks more decorative, more interesting. Another way to do it is to write your letter out. You can do this with script or printing. And notice where you're pulling your pen down. That's called the downstroke. So here's the J for journal. I come down and then I loop up. That's the downstroke. With the O, my downstroke is on the left side of the O, and now I curve back up. My downstroke on the U starts the U, comes down, and then goes back up. Downstroke to start the R, loop around, and downstroke again. Downstroke to start the N, and then I'm coming back up. I'm going to make a lowercase a just for fun, downstroke, and then I curve up, and then there's another downstroke, and then here's a downstroke for the letter L, and a loop. Now you see I was having trouble lining everything up because I don't have a guideline there, so I purposefully pulled that L down a little bit. It's what I was talking about earlier. You can make some of your mistakes look like positive things. Now I know where my downstrokes are, so I'm going to embellish that text just a little bit to zhuzh it up. These are just gel pens. You can use anything you want. If you just have another color of the regular pen, that's fine too. But I'm going to find my downstroke and add these little dots. That would be one way to brighten up this writing and make it look a little bit more interesting. So I'm doing that on all the downstrokes. Let me change colors here. What if I just put an extra blue line where my downstrokes are? That too can punch it up a little bit. So downstrokes are a super easy way to work with your own handwriting and just make it look a little bit more decorative. The last technique I love will also slow down your thinking, and that's where you're going to write the same word, but this time we're going to spread it out, make it go as wide as possible. So using the same word journal, this is what I mean, and I'm doing this in cursive. There's my J. Now I'm going way over to make the O, way over to make the U, and spreading out the U. By spreading it out, it doesn't matter what your handwriting looked like to start. This is just going to fill the space in your journal and make it interesting. Here's where I've used that. Can you see this October spread way out? And I wanted to use up all that space, so I made a flourish there. Oh, here's adding weight to the word sketching. I did that in the orange pen just to make it a little more interesting, but you can see how I added weight under the S, the K, right around here, every place that that line originally touched what would be an imaginary guideline. Oh, here's some downstroking. So the I, the N, that's where I put my extra little dots just to make it fancy. So this whole page uses everything. Yep, there's the letter guide. Here's some text bands. And again, you see with these text bands how I've given a little space to some of these funny small words, the, and. I like the word actually, so I spread that out, gave it a little more space, just for some graphic variation. So finally, if you're wondering what to write in the first place, one of the things that's a fun activity, especially if you're by yourself, or actually is great when you're with a group of your friends, is to try to find language that's being spoken around you and just jot it down. For instance, I was in the coffee shop the other day, and in this section here where I wrote bits and pieces, I just heard some funny snippets of conversation around me and I jotted them down. This one said, "Freeze your mind up." This one, someone sitting next to me said, "We're never going to overspend." And somebody else spoke, "I'm trying to remember, social cooperation," etc. So I've just put down some found words. I might use those in a slightly different way on my book, but I like listening to the conversation. That really anchors my experience. Finally, I love lists. And I will often use my text, my own handwriting, to create lists, especially after I've visited someplace. In this case, I was in New York City, and I thought it would be really fun after I was on 85th Street to think about actually keeping a list of all the dogs I saw there, or lists of the food I didn't eat, etc. So making lists is a great way to include text as well. If you enjoy working with your handwriting to make it more interesting, more calligraphic, you would enjoy looking at Laura Lavender's class on calligraphy. I really recommend you check that out. We started this lesson talking about text being an integral part of a journal. I hope that by trying some of these techniques, you'll feel more comfortable working with your own text. In our next lesson, we'll incorporate ephemera, which is a very fancy way of saying all those little bits and pieces of wonderful things you found along the way.